Hello, this is Aaron Ensley, and I am an economics instructor here at Jackson College. I'm actually the only full-time economics instructor, or they call me the lead faculty, here at JC. You're likely seeing this video because you are enrolled in either micro or macroeconomics. But we do not do sequencing here at Jackson College, meaning you can take either micro or macro first. It doesn't make a difference, whatever one you choose. Micro, of course, is dealing more with business and firm decisions, and macro is more about GDP and unemployment and inflation, kind of thing, big picture, things that you hear out of Washington. They have a lot of differences, but at the base, microeconomics and macroeconomics are both have some of the same foundations, including things like private property rights, price controls, rule of law, and many other concepts. So there's going to be a lot of overlap, and this is just an intro video to help you understand some of the basics. So before we get started, I want to share kind of my background and how I got interested in economics. I currently live in Jackson, Michigan. I've been here for since 2017, started teaching at JC. Prior to that, I taught at a college prep school in Wisconsin called Brookfield Academy. It was a pretty elite school. I taught advanced placement microeconomics, macroeconomics, and those were pretty smart kids. They would go on to pretty elite schools, Harvard, Princeton, Stanford, not all of them, of course, but pretty great place to work. And, I'm very familiar with the AP curriculum as a consequence of working there and really appreciated it. But I myself attended a community college, and this is a little more my speed. Um, Prior to the prep school, I worked for the Foundation for Economic Education, running educational programming. And I also taught at Northwood University for, gosh, about 7, 8, maybe 10 years, something like that. It was my first teaching job. I also have some business experience. I ran a lawn mowing business called Absolute Power Equipment for about 10 years. I was working my way through high school and college. And I also own a side business called Absolute Power Equipment, which is mostly I buy and sell zero-turn lawnmowers. Obviously, I had some experience with it. So I'm a bit of a practitioner in business as well as obviously I like the theory and the stuff about how markets work, which is really what's interesting to me. I want to go backward a little bit and tell you about why I'm interested in economics, and it really goes back to a kind of a question that I asked after spending a month in India, which is so I was there on a short-term missions trip, so it was about a month, 2006, February. And I kept asking myself, why are some countries rich and some are poor? Why was India so poor? And why are we so rich in the United States? And around that time, or shortly after, I transferred to a school called Northwood University, where I had a wonderful professor named Brennan Brown, who taught me the importance of economic institutions. And I'm going to show you a picture here. These economic institutions are things like private property rights, rule of law, efficient regulation, sound currency, and flexible prices, things like that. And I didn't really have a good appreciation. Free trade is another important one. I didn't really have an appreciation for what we now call economic freedom or sound economic institutions. So you could think of these things as the soil or the base in which the economy can grow, or businesses can flourish. So if you look over at the heat map that I have, you look at all the different countries, and they're all ranked by property rights and all these different factors. And this one is from the Heritage Foundation, which is sort of a conservative think tank. There's others that are similar, but I happen to like their website the best because it's the most colorful and easy to see. If I clear everything, I'm going to click on just India. One of the things you'll notice right away is their property rights are very bad. 49 out of 100. Government integrity, very poor. And mostly what that means, and there's other factors I could talk about, but mostly what that means is if you try to start a business there, your property is not secure. You might not be able to get title. Um, I know, for example, cars are stolen all the time, and there's not much you can do about it. People will sleep in their cars to keep them from being stolen. Now, these are all things that we take for granted here in the United States that, there are titles to cars and property, and we don't have to worry about things being stolen quite the same way. And if it is stolen, it might be recovered and returned to us, or at a minimum, insurance will pay for it. In India, insurance is very, very expensive for that reason because sound property rights are not secured. Another factor might be government efficiency, which I think is over here somewhere, or business freedom. Maybe it's lumped into that. So if you look at India, very, very hard to start a business. Might have to fill out a stack of forms like this thick, and you might never even get an answer as to whether or not you're approved. And so it's a very bureaucratic and difficult process. If you come to the United States, I've formed two LLCs. I did it myself. It wasn't overly difficult. It's not easy, I'm not saying that. But in some countries, it might take you over a year to file that paperwork and get things up and running as you wanted. And in fact, there's a great. I'll maybe clear this one. I'll bounce over here to Peru. So here's Peru. Not quite as bad as India, but their government integrity and judicial effectiveness very low. And if you, I know of an economist named Hernando de Soto that did this study, and he said working around the clock, three students, college students, trying to get all the licenses and permits for a sewing shop, it took them loosely or roughly 250 days or something like that to get approval. That's where the law and the rule of law and the system are out of reach. Now, if we go over here to the United States, you can see that it's a much better system. We have a government spending problem, a huge national debt, obviously. But outside of that, it's much better. So if I refresh this and we go look back at all of the countries, one of the things that you'll see is that some countries like the United States, Australia, and Chile, a lot of Western Europe, very green, indicating that they have a good system where businesses and individuals can flourish. And they can, start their businesses, they can get their products to market, and people can buy and trade and sell freely. If you go to other places, let's take China, here's Sudan, Egypt, Ethiopia, there's all these different countries in most of the Middle East, very problematic here. They're going to have a very difficult time getting their economy going because they just don't have that foundation. A little, excuse me, a little closer to home, here's Cuba, here's Haiti, let's take Cuba, for example. If you wanted to start a business in Cuba, good luck. 24 out of 100, basically in every category, just very, very bad. And, you could go to some other examples. Here's South Korea. You can compare South Korea. Overall score of about 73. We could look at North Korea. And North Korea, obviously, 2.9, that's a great score. So you say, well, these are the same people in North and South Korea. They were split in half, back after the Korean War. And as a result, they were put under two economic systems. And in the North Korea, they basically have poverty and starvation and very, very dire situation. Where South Korea is a pretty nice place. And it all came down to the system. Same people, same culture, put under two different systems. So, after spending some time, at Northwood University, what I learned, and by the way, prior to going to Northwood, I had already taken two economics courses. And if this makes you feel any better or worse, I got a C plus in my first economics class, and I really didn't like it. It was all graphing and modeling, and it was very abstract. I didn't quite see the point. But when I went to Northwood, I suddenly started seeing that, wow, this is really important. that the economic system in a country really determines how prosperous the nation becomes and how um, how empowered and how well off the people can be. And there's a lot more to that. It could be also includes things like a better environment, longer life expectancy, better protected civil rights. And oddly enough, it has almost nothing to do with democracy. Um, up until about, I don't know what year it was exactly, but let's say it was 2017, 2018, Hong Kong was actually a non-democratic, they were kind of I guess you could call them a colony they used to be a colony of Britain, but then they became a colony of, or a part of China. And they didn't mess with them, and they remained one of the most prosperous places in the world, very densely populated, no natural resources, and no democracy. They had a very simple system of government, 15% flat tax, no social services like, Social Security Administration, no national health care, none of that. And, they had more Rolls Royces and yachts and all kinds of great things in that country, all because of the system. Now, of course, the Chinese government has interfered with that system quite a bit in, let's say, the last 10 years, and things have changed. But Hong Kong was actually the freest nation or city-state in the world for a very long time. All right, so why am I telling you all this? Well, I was very fascinated by this. I thought, wow, that's how you can help people in India. We got to change their system. Now, of course, I can't do that. But I became very fascinated by economics and realizing that the reason that some people are rich and some people are poor around the world generally had more to do with economic systems, because there's this correlation. Generally, all these green countries that you see are much wealthier than, say, the red. And there's a bunch of data that I can show you at another point that demonstrates this, and there's some documentation and canvas on it. So it's a fascinating thing that the economic freedom actually leads to overall prosperity and wealth. And it's not just money, it's the ability to get good health care, good education, things like that. But a lot of the things that I had thought about economics was wrong. And it wasn't until I started learning about economic systems that I appreciated the importance of economics and kind of harnessing and empowering people to flourish and harnessing their creativity. Oh, and that's another thing, that free countries, more music, more movies, more creativity, more innovation comes out of the free countries, not the countries where the government tells them what to do. So, or where it restricts them. If you think of entrepreneurs that come to the United States, a lot of them come from places like China, India, and really all over the world. And they succeed here, but they can't succeed in their home country because there's too many restrictions. So anyway, that's a little bit of my background. I want to start by kind of shift gears and go into this course. I want to start by basically acknowledging this is a very difficult course. This is a 7-week, well, if you are in a 7-week online course, 7-week online courses are very difficult. They're essentially double speed. You could argue about these numbers, but in a traditional 15-week course, you'd go to lecture 3 hours a week, and then the rule of thumb was that you study 3 to 4 hours for every hour you're in lecture. So let's call it 10 hours of studying a week plus the 3 hours of lecture. So that's a lot of studying. But now this is a double speed course without lecture. That's a lot of work. A lot of students walk into this course thinking it's easier because it's online and it's faster and it's easier because it's shorter. It's not. It's an accelerated course. So I want to warn you up front, be prepared to work in this class. This class is not particularly hard. It's not any more difficult than any other econ class, but it's also not dumbed down. It is a real economics course, actually slightly lower or less in difficulty than what I taught in high school when I taught AP. I actually had to cut some material out to make it all fit. So it's doable. And, when I taught AP, I had a couple of students I had one that tied for the highest score in the country, got a 90 out of 90 on her AP exam. Only 75 kids in the country did that. And I was pretty blown away that, I could be the teacher that helped her get there. So, I know the content, I know it's difficult, but it's doable. A lot of my students got fives and fours on their AP exams. In fact, most of them got a five or a four. Um, but this is not an AP course, so there's stuff that I can manipulate and change. And I can focus more on the basics. I think about, football. The basics of football are something like, you got to be able to run, block, kick, catch, tackle, stuff like that. You can get really fancy with things like trick plays and, Hail Marys and strategy and all that. But when it comes down to it, football's about those basics. That's really my kind of my heart for teaching. It's not for you to understand, how to calculate the elasticity of strawberries or something like that, and understand cost curves and product curves. Although we're going to do some of that, and it's important. But at the end of the day, I want you to understand prices and how markets work and the importance of private property and free trade, and how trade is a win-win, and how there's an important component to the economy that we don't think about, which is the soundness of our money and inflation. So there's so many things that are really basic that we're going to cover that I really want to drive those home more than some of those technical or modeling details. A lot of what modern economics courses are really math courses, and I don't really buy that. So we're going to do plenty of math, but math is kind of like an analogy or a map to understand the real world in economics. The graphs are supposed to depict things that are actually happening. They're not the real economy. They're just models. And I've heard it said that all models are wrong, but they're still useful. So we're going to use those models, but let's not lose sight of economics is about human beings and how they get the things that they want. This is a social science. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're studying the actions of human beings and how economic systems in particular govern their behavior, which is consistent with our general education outcome number 5 in Jackson College, general education outcomes. Okay, so I want to make clear, and I already did, that you should probably spend at least 9 or 12 hours a week on this course. There's a lot of videos, there's a lot of supplements that'll help you, but you're going to have to put in the time. When I give you a 2-hour video, which I will, don't skim it. Don't think that you can just skip it. It'll be on your exam, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But if you skip it, you're not going to get those questions right. And a lot of people do. They try to bypass the learning process, and they think they're doing themselves a favor. They're not. So just know in advance you're going to have to put in the time. And the time to drop this course, if you can't put in the time, is now, before you can't, right before the census date, which is always, I think, the 8th day of the course. Okay, so we talked about the time on task expectation. The next thing is prerequisites. There are English and mathematics prerequisites. You have to take both, and I'm going to double check the numbers here because I think they might have changed, but it was English 085 and English 090. And those numbers might have been tweaked, and I should have double checked, but I didn't. And then Math 131. These are prerequisite courses for a reason, because if you're not prepared to do math, writing, and reading, you're not going to succeed in this course. There's a lot of writing. There's not a lot of math, but there's plenty of graphing. And if you're not ready to do that, then you're not in a good position to succeed. Excuse me. There are proctored exams in this course. They are proctored, they're live proctored, meaning that you either have to go to the testing lab, come to one of the days that I offer proctoring in a classroom, in a computer lab, or you have to, you can, this is not officially the case, but we've been using the Lenawee Center as well as the Hillsdale Center, and we've had some volunteers to do proctoring there. You may not take the exam at home on your own. You must have a proctor. If you live outside of a 60-mile radius of Central Campus, we can arrange a virtual proctoring for you. There are some instances where we allow other students, whether they have a disability or something like that, then we can arrange that. And that's kind of a one-on-one, one-off thing, individual basis. So let me know if that's a problem for you. But proctored exams are not negotiable. They're required. And that's a little bit unusual for online class, but I have very good reasons for putting them in place. And I'm very glad that I did. I've done that for well over a year now. Okay, instructor support. Really important to know that I like meeting with students, and if you need help, I'm glad to help you. Please reach out to me and let me know if you need anything. I will be glad to meet with you via MS Teams or in my office on campus, depending on my schedule and office hours. Happy to help. I'll walk you through whatever it is that you need. I'm also going to probably offer some sort of a time where I'm just going to be sitting in a classroom on campus, and I'll probably be working on grading or something, and you can just jump in there, and if you have any questions, I can go through anything, or we could even study the material in a different way. I mean, I'm very open, so let me know if there's anything I can do to help you. I like to really stress this for students. You pay my salary and I work for you, so if you need something, let me know. I also want to point out that I have for the discussion boards, which I can talk about shortly. All of the discussions are pretty interesting topics. They're usually once a week, and the topics might include something like Week 1, 7 principles. It could be a topic like Henry Ford and the auto industry and how that relates to economics. For the first week, I don't typically do this, but weeks 2 and beyond, I offer an oral discussion rather than writing it out. And the reason I do that is because I'm not looking to see how good of a writer you are. I'm looking to see whether or not you know the content. Plus, I'd rather talk to students than read their essays. And if you come prepared, you watch the material, you read the material, you have something intelligent to say, and we can have some dialogue about it, I just give you credit. So watch for a calendar invite regarding those MS Team sessions. I'm always open to doing multiple if students cannot, let's say you work during the day or something, or you're in school. That's perfectly fine, and I'd be glad to accommodate you. So yeah, just let me know if there's anything I can do for you. I'm going to turn over here to the course. Just want to give you a quick layout. I'm not going to go through the welcome stuff. What I do want to point out is each week, actually I'm going to jump over to week 1B. And on week 1B, one of the things that you're going to notice, and don't be alarmed if you see some changes between what you see here and whatever it is you're seeing in Canvas, because I'm making changes all the time. So each week you're going to have homework problems, you're going to have a quiz, you're going to have a quiz over the public issues book. That's the book with the eagle on it that you will find in BibliU. So BibliU is here. If you click on this button here, that's going to take you to both of your textbooks. And then usually there's a discussion board, which in this case it's tied to the 7 principles, which was week 1A. If you look down here, you're going to see some podcasts. I use these Econ Talk podcasts a lot because they're fantastic. It's just a conversation with Russell Roberts, former University of Chicago student and professor. And what he does is he just interviews people. Sometimes they're Nobel laureates or they wrote a book, and they will give you a pretty interesting conversation. These are always optional. What's required is everything that's here. These are mostly short videos. If you click on them, they just pop up really fast, and I'm not going to play the video, but you can watch it. See, that's a 4-minute video, and it's going to illuminate whatever the concept is that's being highlighted in either that chapter or that module. So they're pretty good videos. I would use them in the classroom if we were in the classroom, but obviously we're on Canvas. Then you're going to have an entire list of supplemental videos. And these supplemental videos, I highlighted the wrong thing. They're optional, but they might be very helpful. There's usually a lot. Sometimes they're really relevant, and you could read or watch them, and it'll illuminate that concept. Sometimes they're fun, like this is a Monty Python thing that's really tied to the idea of scientific thinking. So just know that every week you have at least one outline that looks like that. I'm going to jump ahead to chapter 2, and I want to stress this. So these are infographics here. Usually I'll actually put a little note in here that kind of tells you what we're up to that week. Here you have your textbook chapter, your PowerPoint, which you don't have to do anything with the PowerPoint if you don't want to, an outline. You have a video and graphing tutorial notes, which if you click on that, it'll show you them. Tells you what to read. Here's the Henry Ford essay and some other readings. And then there's some optional worksheets. And then there's answer keys. Use these. These are very helpful. If you go down here, one of the things you're going to see is a video of me walking through this whole thing. So these are graphing tutorials. Sometimes they're graphing tutorials. This one's kind of long. It's pretty unusual because I put all the graphing tutorials combined in with the PowerPoint, which I kind of regret doing and I might change later, but for the moment, that's where it is. So make sure you're using these resources. This is the lecture on video. Print off the notes and the graphing tutorials and then follow along. Then again, you're going to have, you have all these videos, supplemental, optional, and then you have the required ones. So these ones are all required. So the next thing that I want to stress here is you have these homework problems. These homework problems can be retaken as many times as you would like. So let's say the chapter 2 homework problems. You read the textbook, you look at the PowerPoint, you take the homework problems. You get a 10 out of 15. Well, take them again and keep taking them. And if you don't understand why you got something wrong, and you get the highest score. So if you don't understand why you got something wrong, then definitely ask me, Google it, look in your textbook, use AI, whatever. And this is where there's a really healthy way to use AI. If you happen to have ChatGPT or something like that, you can cut and paste the question over to ChatGPT and say, why did I get this wrong? And it'll explain the whole thing. It's like a private tutor. It's amazing. It's not a bad thing. It's not cheating either. What's cheating with AI, or what's really being dishonest and short-circuiting the learning process, is cutting and pasting all the questions over to ChatGPT and finding that the answer is A, C, D, B, whatever. Like that doesn't help you. And that's only going to backfire on you as you go to take the exam, and you can't use any AI or Google or anything like that. So be careful. Same is true with the essays. Let's take the 7 principles essay. So if you go through and if you take all the instructions, you punch them into ChatGPT, it's going to give you some sort of an essay that's going to sound like a brochure to Disneyland. And if I read it very closely, I'm going to notice you probably didn't go there. It sounds like a brochure. You probably didn't read the essay. You probably didn't watch the video. And as a consequence, you're probably going to get all those questions wrong on your exam. Don't do this. It's like training for a bike race using an e-bike instead of using a bicycle with pedals. You're not helping yourself. You're fooling yourself. It's like telling your coach that you did the work, then you get to game day, and basically you can't function. So, or you can't perform. Very, very important. I can't tell you how many students failed my course last semester because they were not learning the material. They were trying to find the right answers, and they were trying to fool me, and they ultimately only fooled themselves. They went and took their proctored exam. Some of them got 40%. Some of them I had some students that got under 20% on the exam because they didn't know anything about the material that they were purporting to know when they wrote that beautiful, very sanitized and vague AI-based essay that sounded like a brochure to Disneyland. It wasn't wrong, but it didn't really sound like they had been there. So my plea to you is to do the work. You're only fooling yourself. And a lot of students have done this, and they have basically found that it doesn't work. All right, on the discussion boards. Oh, by the way, after you take the homework problems 3-4 times and you finally get the score that you want, that's a good time finally to take the quiz. And then when you take the quiz, that's all feeding into your grade, obviously, but it's also going to help you do better on that exam. Now, on the discussion boards, I'm always toying with this, but you have an initial post that's going to be 3 paragraphs long, and then you have to respond to students each time. Now, I'm not going to read you all of the criteria, but in essence, you need to, in your initial post, understand what's the claim and what does it mean, analyze it, now what, and then you need to reflect on it. Like, what does it mean? If I don't hear your voice in it, you probably are giving me a brochure that you didn't even attend, you go to the place that you said you did. So I'm very, very picky about the discussions. I read them all. I spend many, many, many hours grading them. And I will ask you if I have a problem. Expect to get an email. And I'll say, I don't get this. You're going to have to explain it. Let's have a meeting. So don't be surprised when that happens. Or you could, just make sure you're being very, very clear. And this is where I would say, make it easy on me. Be very, very clear up front. Make it easy on the grader. I'm grading. I was told at an AP conference, guy who was training us to teach AP said, look, have your students make it easy on the grader. If they're looking for a certain thing, make sure that thing is very clear. So I'm telling you all in this guidance what I'm looking for. Make it very obvious that you know the thing. All right, so here's something important. Do not simply summarize the assigned materials in your post. I already know what the material says. Your role is to demonstrate comprehension of the claims, apply the concepts, and use the economic way of thinking. For the student response, I say clearly state your selected role in your response. That's challenger, extender, clarifier, skeptic. The focus must be on substance and adding value to the discussion, rather than praise or critiques of non-content related items. I don't want to hear, oh, great job, Bob. That sounds great. And then you repeat what they said. That's fluff. Add value in your discussions. That's what we're looking for. We are trying to learn the material. And this is a training ground for you to sharpen each other in the forums. And if you're not doing that, you're really hurting yourself. So I'd really want to encourage you to do that. Okay, let's see. I think that's pretty good. So make sure you read the syllabus, take the syllabus quiz. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm always glad to help. Take this course seriously. I realize that in a lot of online courses, you can get away with a lot of things. You can't in this one. And I'm not here to catch you, but you're definitely not going to pass if you're using AI to get, and again, you can use it in a healthy way as a tool, and it's a good thing. But you can also use it as a crutch. You can use it as something that actually impedes your learning, and as a consequence, it short circuits the process, and now you don't know the materials when you go to game day on the exam. It's 50% of your grade, the exams are. So it's very, very hard to pass the class, even if you have a really, really good grade in all the other assignments, because maybe you used AI to write your essays, hopefully you don't, and then you fooled me, but then you get to the exam, and you get 20% on the exam. That's tough, but that tells me something. Somebody wasn't really being honest with themselves about what they know. All right, let's maybe call it there. I will be glad to talk to you via email or meeting. Just reach out to me and let me know if there's anything I can do. If you have not taken the prerequisites, please make sure that you talk to your navigator before continuing on. Basically, they're required and you've been warned. And if you're moving forward without taking the prerequisites, that's going to be a problem. Maybe I'll show you one last thing before I let you go. This is the content that you're not going to be able to see yet in the course. When the exam comes, now this is not your dates and this is not the correct details, but I just want to show you that if you click on the exam details, all of the details are here about proctoring and all the details, whether or not you can take notes and stuff like that, what materials on it. So it's going to be very, very important that you read the emails that I send you. that you look at the instructions. I cannot tell you how many students don't read the instructions. I'm not sure how you're going to succeed if you don't read the instructions. So please be very careful and diligent in this course, but know also that I'm on your team and I'm here to help you, and I really want you to succeed. But I don't want you to have any illusions about this being, it's not an easy class and it requires a lot of work. And I've seen many students frustrated. I've seen people cry, and I don't take pleasure in it. But I've also seen many, many students that go on to take economics at a higher level. And I've had multiple students getting PhDs in economics because they've learned to love it, because it's a wonderful subject, very important for your life as well. But the goal is to make sure that we do a good job and that we actually learn the content. All right. Well, I think that's enough for me. Have a great day, and I will see you in the forums and in the class.